Before I start with the housekeeping rules, I think it would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to wish you all a very happy and peaceful new year. Before we proceed with the items on the agenda, I need to remind you of the usual housekeeping rules. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave the chamber by the nearest door. Then follow the illuminated exit signs and assemble in the car park at the rear of the building. Also, would you please ensure that your phones and tablet devices are in silent mode? Thank you. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. So far, we've received apologies from councillors Gerard, McKay and Robinson. Are there any other apologies?
Councillor Johnny Leach may be arriving late. Madam Mayor, he's on his way up from rugby this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Fail?
Councillor Rayner. Councillor Smith.
Any more? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the confirmation of the minutes. Can I please have a proposal that the minutes of the council meeting, which was held on the 14th of November 2019, be approved as a correct record?
I should like to propose those, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that proposal?
I'm happy to second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Does anyone want to comment on the factual accuracy of the minutes or propose an amendment? In that case, would those members present at the 14th of November meeting who are in favour of confirming the minutes as a correct record, please indicate.
(33).
Those against?
6.
Any abstentions? The minutes are confirmed. The next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. I understand that the Chief Executive wishes to inform councillors of an amendment. He has been told this is to be proposed under the notice of motion under agenda item 14. This may affect whether or not some councillors consider they have a prejudicial interest.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I've had clarification from those who submitted the notice of motion to make it clear that it's those born in the 1950s. So that's from the 6th of April 1951 to the 31st of December 1959. So if you were born before and or after that date, and you particularly after the date of 1951, and you were thinking of declaring a prejudicial interest, then if you're born from 1960 onwards, you don't need to declare a prejudicial interest. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do any members or officers have any interest to declare on any items included on the agenda? Right. Councillor Michael Vincent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a personal and pecuniary interest in the notices of motion, as both my mum and stepmum are affected by the changes.
Next, who is it? Could you keep your hands up, please, then we know who we're addressing. Councillor Alan Vincent.
Madam Mayor, my wife is affected by this, so I have a personal and prejudicial interest.
Thank you. Councillor Roger Berry.
Yeah, my wife is also affected by it, so I have a personal.
Councillor Howard Ballard. I must say it's very nice to see you back here, Howard.
Thank you, my wife.
Councillor Matthew Vincent.
My mother's affected, so I have a personal.
Councillor Paul Moon.
Just my sister's affected by this, but there's no financial interest in it.
Okay, so it's not prejudicial. Okay.
Councillor Ken Minto.
Yes, my wife is.
So is it a prejudicial interest? So it's a prejudicial interest. Yeah.
Councillor Rob Fail.
The motion to be debated on item 14 is in essence a call for the government to reconsider.
Sorry, can I? Are you giving an explanation before you? That's fine, okay. That's all right. Yes, you go ahead.
The motion to be debated on item 14 is in essence a call for the government to reconsider the transitional arrangements to state pension for those born in the 50s but after the 5th of April 1951. As my common law wife falls into this bracket, it may be seen that I would indirectly gain from the government agreeing to compensation. However, the financial benefit would be minimal, and consequently my consideration of the request for the government to relook at the transitional arrangements is 100% based on the impact on the general public, not on the impact on my household. Furthermore, the reconsideration would be made by the government and not the council. Therefore, there is no prejudicial interest, only a personal one on my part.
Councillor Ian Amos.
My wife is involved in prejudicial interest.
Councillor Colette Birch.
I don't know why anybody should.
Councillor Andrew Copper.
What's she got her hand up for? Don't be pathetic.
Leave it.
Councillor Paul Ellison.
We all know women.
Councillor Barry Birch.
Prejudicial. Rita's not put her hand up.
Councillor Rita Amos, have you? Thank you. Is that everybody?
No, you can.
Councillor Birch?
Could I just bring to your attention, we don't seem to have any microphones working along this side.
Sorry, it's got to put mine on.
It was meant to be this side.
Yeah.
Councillor Walmsley?
I have a prejudicial interest because I was born in the 1950s in that age group.
Thank you.
I want to remind, if you've declared a prejudice interest, you need to leave the meeting when it comes to the item.
Say it again.
Just if they've declared a prejudicial
Right.
interest, to remind them to leave the meeting before the item.
Can I just remind, councillors, can I just remind you all, please, if you have declared a prejudicial interest, it's wise to leave the meeting when that item comes up.
Not wise, it's required.
It's required, it's not even wise. It's necessary. Thank you. We come on to item 4, which is announcements. I have 5 announcements this evening. The first being a reminder that the Mayor's Civic Dinner is at the North Euston Hotel, Fleetwood, on Friday, February the 28th at 7 o'clock. Tickets are on sale now, so if you intend to come, and it would be lovely to see you all there, can you please book a ticket as soon as possible from Andrea Mullen. There is a spring concert by the Blackpool Male Voice Choir, courtesy of Norman Irish, who's helped me to organise this, and Reverend Leach, who's kindly offered the venue and refreshments. It will be a great evening, and tickets are on sale from £8. Councillor Paul Moon, my heartfelt thanks to you for organising a charity golf day. I understand the date has now been confirmed. Could you remind me, because we had to change it from the bank holiday?
It will be the 6th of April, and the details I've given to Andrea to promulgate forthwith.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moon. I'm very grateful to you. Councillor Berry's wife, Joan, is arranging an angel card reading evening at the Cube on the 5th of February, starting at 7 o'clock. Tickets are on the door, and that promises to be an interesting and hopefully enlightening evening. I don't know if you all heard that, but Roger won't be there. Most likely. And the final announcement is I'm coming to the end of my tenure in this post in May. So already the wheels are in motion for the announcement of the next mayor-elect, and I'm sure some of you know already, but it's my pleasure to announce that the mayor-elect for 2020 to 21 is Councillor Barry Birch, who I'm now going to ask to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Madam Mayor. It would be an honour to follow in your footsteps and be the next Mayor of Wyre. Colette, my wife, has agreed to be the Mayoress. Colette and I have had a wonderful time during this past year as your deputies, and we have enjoyed promoting Wyre and have met some interesting people along the way. I would now like to introduce my deputies, Councillor Andrew Cropper and his lovely wife Jane, and I am looking forward to working together with them during the coming year. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. I'm sure you'll be a splendid ambassador for the borough. Before we move on, I'd also like to remind members that as the last meeting was cancelled, and it was the pre-Christmas meeting when there is hospitality, we missed out on all that, so there are a few New Year nibbles and drinks as an alternative, and they'll be available after the meeting in the Mayor's parlour, or is it the Mayor's?
I think it's Members' Lounge. Yeah.
We've moved it to the Members' Lounge in the hope that you'll all come. So we'll be very cosy in the parlour. So it's the Members' Lounge, and I'd be delighted if you'd all come and join me in a drink there, so thank you for that. We'll now move on to item 5, which is public questions and statements. I'm moving very swiftly on. There are no such questions or statements, so we can go on to item 6. This is the item questions on notice from councillors. Again, no questions have been submitted, so we'll move on to executive reports. So first, Leader, can I ask you to introduce your report as Leader of the Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As it says in the report at 2, Economic Prosperity Board, that I would provide members with a verbal update on that meeting, as it only took place a couple of days ago. The most important agenda item on that meeting was the Future High Street Fund, the Fylde Coast Tramway Loop. And the pointing of this was that we were to include in the Future High Street Fund a part about the tramway link. And following discussions at the board meeting, it's proposed that each local authority includes with their FHSF submission a bid for resources in order for Blackpool Council, in conjunction with Lancashire County Council as the Transport Authority for Fylde and Wyre, to undertake a comprehensive feasibility study to recommend a sufficiently developed preferred option which will be capable of being implemented if a future opportunity becomes available. It's important that this tramway opportunity, or light rail or heavy rail, whichever one is the best, is pursued to prepare the way to develop a network which will further enhance the sub-regions in terms of accessibility, regeneration and environmental sustainability, and to support economic sectors such as the tourism. It's estimated that a comprehensive business case study in the first instance will cost £2 million, and this will be split equally between the councils. There was good debate on this at the time, and I was happy to see that Craig was there from the Labour group. I believe he was paying attention, but he was sat behind me, so I couldn't see if he was or not. It was interesting, and the outcome, realistically, which I'll be taking to Lancashire Leaders meeting this next week, is that here on the Fylde Coast, the 3 authorities are very, very serious about this, that we want to push ahead, we want to see something achieved, because it will benefit the whole of the Fylde Coast, should the whole lot be done. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm prepared to take questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions on that report? No? Well, in that case, that concludes the consideration of the Leader's report. We'll now move on to the report of the Resources Portfolio Holder. Councillor Alan Vincent, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report is before members. I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions or comments for Councillor Vincent?
No questions or comments? No.
If there are no more questions, then that concludes the consideration of the Resources Portfolios Holders report. We'll now move on to the report of the Street Scene, Parks and Open Spaces portfolio holder. Councillor Bridge, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to add to the report my thanks to the officers and the members of their departments. There's some great stuff in there and it's all down to their hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Councillor Bridge? Councillor Fail.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you know, the District Enforcement Task Group has been meeting for the last few months and is continuing its work, part of which is to assess the success or otherwise of the pilot scheme. In terms of dog fouling, my perception is currently that although there has been an increase in fines for fouling and not having the means to pick up, the actual issue is not diminishing. Clearly, that is one of the areas the group will need to provide recommendations on, but in the meantime, I wanted to alert you to a potential black hole in the dog fouling reporting online system. It would be remiss of me not to say that the Street Scene team do a great job, cleaning up reported incidents both in terms of speed and effectiveness. Now, I'm not certain where the problem lies, but having reported a dog fouling issue on the 23rd of December and received a reference in an immediate email response, I really wasn't expecting that the response would go unresolved over Christmas and New Year. I understand Street Scene staff were working, so maybe the problem is a communication issue from the online reporting system. Whatever the issue is, though, it's important you are aware of the potential black hole, as this potentially affects all online reporting over Christmas periods, and I'm sure you will agree that it's vital we keep our streets free of dog muck and fly tipping, etc. at all times of the year.
Thank you, Councillor Fail. Councillor Bridge, would you like to respond to Councillor Fail, please?
Thank you. The systems are in place. We don't know why we'll look into it. But of course, you could have always made a phone call to me over the Christmas period. I would have looked into it earlier for you. But if you wish to bring it up tonight, then we'll look at it after tonight.
Thank you. Any more questions for Councillor Bridge? That concludes the consideration of the report of Street Scene, Parks and Open Spaces portfolio holder. We will now move on to the report of the Planning and Economic Development portfolio holder. Councillor Michael Vincent, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report's before members. Happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Councillor Vincent? Councillor Sturzaker.
Councillor Vincent, regarding the studios of the Mar community, there are many people who have turned to us as to help them with their mental health. Some of these are physically disabled. Can you please confirm to me that these studios are fully accessible in accordance with the Equalities Act of 2010?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not tonight, but I will do.
If there are no more questions, then we conclude the consideration of the Planning and Economic Development portfolio holders report and move on to the report of the Neighbourhood Services and Community Safety portfolio holder. Councillor Berry, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before introducing my report, I'd like to say that we've just received an email from the Environment Agency congratulating on the satisfactory completion of the Rossall Sea defences, which has now been signed off. And they're very pleased to note, and so are we, that we were £6 million under the budget set by the Environment Agency. So I think we've done £6 million is a lot of money, and I think it goes credit to the engineering team led by Carl Green and his officers. I know two of the officers, I'm going to mention by name, Mike Wilkinson and Kath Pye, who worked up at the site for 2 or 3 years, making sure that everything was done to our satisfaction and keeping an eye on expenditure, etc. So their work has really paid benefit, not only for us, but for the country.
We follow that, but are there any questions for Councillor Berry? Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So do we get the 6 million, Councillor Berry? That's one of the, I have another question or another point. Right, I've lost it. That's how good I am. Right, so Councillor Berry, on 2.1 and 2.2, we're looking at homelessness. We have a real problem with homelessness in Fleetwood. Myself and many of my Fleetwood colleagues volunteer at the Mustard Seed Group most Monday evenings, and we've seen for ourselves the scale of the problem. A visit to the Mustard Seed Group on a Monday evening would open your eyes to just how many people in Fleetwood are either homeless or sofa surfing. Earlier this week I was informed by a senior officer that we don't have much of a problem with homelessness in Wyre. Shocking, isn't it? Councillor Berry, I have read the homelessness strategy that we will be voting on later in the agenda, and I support the sentiments of the proposals. But can I just suggest that if we are really serious about homelessness in Wyre, and we're not just ticking boxes, and it also says that one of our strategies is to engage with the public and the voluntary agencies, can I therefore ask that, as you are the Cabinet member with the responsibility for homelessness, could you instruct one of our officers to attend the Mustard Seed Group from 6 p.m. on most Monday evenings? I can assure you that they will be more than welcome, so that we as a council can actively engage with our community, and hopefully we will be able to help lots of these vulnerable people within Fleetwood and within Wyre. Thank you.
Councillor Berry, would you please respond?
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm sure we are very serious about this issue. It's important to us that we are seen to be doing something, and I think the strategy, which we'll discuss a bit later on, goes into great depth. That we do a lot of strategies to try and cover every situation, and I've no doubt I will ask if one of our officers can come along to that meeting and just see what the situation is and talk it through with you. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. If there are no more questions, we'll move on to the next portfolio holder report, and it's Councillor Lynn Bowen. Would you introduce your report, the Leisure, Health and Community Engagement Portfolio, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've just got a couple of things to add to my report, and that is where it mentions the Victorian evening at Garstang. It says about 2 days, and it actually was only on for the first day. The second day was because it was cancelled because of the weather, and it was cancelled at the very last minute, so that's why we didn't have time to change this. And I'd just like to mention the council lottery presentation evening, which is on the 22nd of January at 6 o'clock at the Civic Centre. If any of you know any community groups which would like to put the names forward for funding from this lottery, it would be good if they would come forward and let the officers know, so that they can be put into the pot when it comes to looking at who's going to get the funding and who isn't. So my report's there. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Are there any questions for Councillor Bowen? No, thank you very much. Well, moving on then. We've concluded the Leisure, Health and Community Engagement portfolio. We're now going to move on to the item where Cabinet members are given the opportunity to ask each other questions if they wish to do so. Are there any questions to be asked? No? This concludes the consideration of the executive reports. We will now move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the periodic report from the Chairman of the Planning Committee. Councillor Moon, would you please introduce your report?
Yeah, it's there in front of you, Madam Mayor and members. Any questions can be tabled. There we go.
Thank you, Councillor Moon. Are there any questions for Councillor Moon? No. Thank you. So we'll move on. The next item is a report on changes to the membership of committees. It's item 9. Councillor Henderson, would you please introduce the report and propose the recommendations, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I've only one of the recommendations at 3.2, which is that a Conservative member to be reported to the meeting be removed from the Licensing Committee. Councillor Liz Webster has agreed to stand down from the Licensing Committee. So therefore I put to the members the recommendations 3.1 to 3.4.
Second of the proposal.
I'm happy to second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Go to the vote in that case then. So all members in favour. That's unanimous, thank you very much. So the recommendations are all approved. The next item is report on the local council tax support scheme. Alan Vincent, will you please introduce the report, propose the recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the members who've been members of the authority previously will realise that we've been giving this particular localised council tax support for a number of years now, since 2013 when it first came in. Basically what this means is that we accepted the terms of a government scheme that was put in place some years ago, which allows us to charge only 8.5% to people who are the working poor in effect, who are able therefore to benefit from that relief. All our peers around us, Blackpool, Fylde and quite a number of other authorities in Lancashire, insist on payments of a much higher level, and I think that this is the fairest way to deal with it, because these are people who did not previously, but prior to 2013, have to make any payments. So in a nutshell, that's why we do it, is to try and help them, and I would want to continue with that relief. I have to say that there is a reasonable amount of backlog of people who do not pay, even though we do give this relief, and whether we can financially stand giving this relief in future years is open to debate. But for this year, it's on the table again.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent. Is there a seconder for that proposal?
Second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Are there any questions or amendments? No? That concludes the debate. Would members please vote now on the recommendation? Those in favour, please show. Is it unanimous? The recommendations are approved as it's a unanimous vote. The next item is a report on the Treasury management activity from April 2019 to September 2019. Councillor Alan Vincent, would you please introduce the report and propose the recommendations, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I first of all say thank you to the people who presented the pre-meeting information to councillors. It was a very good turnout. I think it's probably the best turnout we've seen at a pre-council meeting for quite a while, and it was a very useful exercise. This basically in a nutshell tells you what we've been doing in the recent past, and it's something which we report to you on a regular basis. Hopefully, if you haven't had any questions, you would have asked them previously, and you won't ask me. So I would recommend the recommendations.
Bearing all that in mind, is there a seconder for the proposal?
Second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any comments, questions or amendments? Oh, we're doing very well, aren't we? We can go straight to the vote in that case. Would members please now vote on the recommendation? That's unanimous, so we can conclude that the recommendations are approved. The next item is a report on the calendar of meetings for 2020 through 21. Councillor Henderson, would you please introduce the report and propose the recommendations?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There is unfortunately a typo error on the calendar of meetings, on the council meetings. It shows September the 16th as a full council meeting. Well, that's a Wednesday, and I go out on a Wednesday tea time, so I'm not coming. It should be Thursday the 17th. So with that alteration, Madam Mayor, I recommend at 3.1 the calendar of meetings be confirmed.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Is there a seconder for the proposal? Thank you, Councillor Vincent. Are there any comments, questions or amendments? No. Would members please now vote on the recommendation? That's unanimous again, so we can move on. The recommendations can be taken as approved. The next item on the Council's Homelessness and Rough Sleeper Strategy and Action Plan 2020 to 2024. Just bear with me. Councillor Berry, would you please introduce the report and propose the recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report clearly shows there is a demand for homelessness services in the borough, but preventative measures taken so far have reduced the number of full homeless applications to low single figures. But that doesn't mean that we've not got to stand back on what has been the past. We've got to think about the future and what may happen in the future. The report goes into great details of our strategies, highlights 3 strategies. Firstly, to prevent homelessness. Secondly, to ensure there's clear pathways for available accommodation. And thirdly, strategies to improve the health and well-being of those at risk. This document has been open to consultation with the public and other agencies. And it's been before the ONS committee. We have taken on board feedback, including that we should maintain support and assistance for those who need it. We should try and increase the number of affordable housing provision for local people. And thirdly, we should engage with partners and charities to identify and tackle cases of hidden homelessness. And all these points have been incorporated into the strategy document. Madam Mayor, I'd therefore like to propose that we approve the homelessness and rough sleeper strategy to 2020 to 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Is there a seconder for the proposal?
Second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. None. So would members please now vote on the recommendation? Unanimous again, so we find that the recommendations will be approved. The next item is notices of motion. Rats and sinking ships comes to mind. Carry on.
No, we'll wait till David. And then
Right, we'll continue now. Those with the prejudicial interest have left the chamber. There's one notice of motion this evening which has been submitted under paragraph 14 of the Council Procedure Rules by Councillors Swales, Beavers, Longton and Sturzaker. The motion is set out in full under agenda item 14. However, as indicated earlier in the meetings by the Chief Executive, I understand that the councillors who have submitted the motion wish to propose a minor amendment to it. Councillor Swales, would you please propose the motion with the proposed minor amendment now? You have a maximum of 5 minutes to do so.
Okay, for those of you who don't know, WASPI is Women Against State Pension Inequality. Thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate it, and I fully support it. The government should be supporting it wholeheartedly. The 1995 Conservative Government State Pension Act included plans to increase women's state pension from 60 to 65. So that it was the same as men's. Although the WASPI group agrees with equalisation, they do not agree with the unfair way the changes were implemented. I agree wholeheartedly with them. The change to pension rights for women born in the 50s did not give sufficient notice for them to arrange alternative financial provision in planning for their future. In my local community, while standing in election, I had lots of women who mentioned their pension to me. I found that the WASPI women, as a result of this change, are obviously suffering a great deal. For instance, one lady whose husband is suffering from cancer is having to claim universal credit, while many others are struggling to make ends meet. In my view, the government is duty-bound, and they should pay a fair level of compensation to prevent a shortfall in which was originally promised as a retirement pension to all of these women. The WASPI Women's motto is, "We've paid in, so you pay out."
Thank you, Councillor Swales. Councillor Beavis, I understand you're going to second the motion. Would you please do so now?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'd just like to clarify the change to the motion was that therefore, it's the last paragraph, therefore the Council requests the Chief Exec to write to the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State for Works and Pensions to call upon the Government to reconsider transitional arrangements for women born in the 1950s on or after the 6th of April 1951 so that women do not live in hardship due to pension changes that they were not told about until it was too late to make alternative arrangements. And I'm seconding the motion. Can I speak on the seconding of the motion now, Madam Mayor? Yeah. So, I second this motion. I could stand here and attack the government for their attack on the women of this country, but it'll get me nowhere in this chamber. So I come today with two tales of women who have been affected by the 2011 Pensions Act. First, Sue, who I don't know personally, but Sue's story is that she was born in 1954, started work at 18, married at 19 and had 2 children. Sue says, "I always worked part-time and started paying into my local government pension scheme in 1986 and planned and expected my state pension at 60 in 2014. In 2011, I was made redundant due to austerity and urged to take early retirement on the grounds that I would get my state pension at 60 in 2014. In 2012, I got a letter from the DUP informing me my state pension date had been deferred to 2020. I never would have taken redundancy if I had known this. All in all, I have had to wait 6 years. Also, I only have 33 years national insurance stamp. So because the goalpost has been moved to 35, I will not have enough national insurance contributions. I'm in poor health with a heart condition and arthritis in both knees, and I would not pass a medical to return to my previous career as a safeguarding social worker. I've been to the job centre, but can have no benefits as I have a small pension, and no one is going to employ me at my age with my health needs." That's Sue's story. My lovely neighbour Christine, who was born in 1953 also, has had to wait a further 6 years for her pension. Christine has always worked and has brought up 3 children on her own. She hurt her back approximately 10 years ago and was looking forward to retiring at 60 because of her health conditions. I have seen my neighbour nearly crawl to work because of her severe back condition. She has been off work sick more times than I can count, and she's still got another 18 months to go until she reaches the golden age of 66. In the last 2 years, I've seen my lovely neighbour aged 15 years because of her health deteriorating. This is the effect of this badly thought out 2011 Pensions Act and the impact it has on the lives of women of Wyre. I ask that you put your political allegiances aside tonight and you support this motion. Thank you.
Would any members who wish to speak for or against the motion or to propose an amendment please indicate? You will have up to 5 minutes to do so. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, indeed, the basis of the motion is indeed important, both locally and nationally. However, the Conservative group do not agree with the wording of the motion and wish to propose an amendment.
Right, councillors. Mr Payne, would you please advise on whether or not the amendment is valid?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Having read the proposed amendment, clearly it doesn't entirely negate the motion, and is in the spirit of the motion. You are allowed to put forward amendments which would do reduce the number of words, as long as it doesn't entirely negate the motion, and it does not entirely negate the motion. Therefore, I consider the amendment to be valid, and therefore you can then proceed on that basis. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is there a seconder for that amendment?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Do any members wish to speak for or against the amendment?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just for clarification, I'm assuming we're talking about the wording of this amended motion at the moment, not speaking on the motion itself.
You're quite correct.
In that case, could I ask, why is it not, does it not entirely negate it? If you're saying it doesn't entirely negate it, I'm assuming you're saying in some respects it does negate it.
Again, we don't need to probably enter into a extensive debate, the clear wording is the effect is not to entirely negate the motion. The wording is clearly in the spirit of the motion and does not entirely negate the original wording. So the proposal as now put before you as an amendment is a valid amendment.
So it's been seconded.
Yeah.
So I have to propose the now.
So if it helps members, you can now have a debate on the amendment. So
Is there any member who wishes to speak for or against the amendment? Councillor Fail?
Obviously, we've only had 30 seconds to look at this, so obviously we're comparing one with the other. But from the outset, it talks about providing, the original one talks about fair arrangements, whereas this talks about mitigating the impact of these changes. Well, it's not the same thing. It's about fairness, this, and I don't think the wording here is sufficient to say that the government need to put in fair arrangements for all women born during that period. I accept roughly that it's women be aged between 60 and 69. That's not the issue. It's about what the impact is on these people of that age, and I don't think it gets across the point that the government need to look at this and make fair arrangement. It talks about mitigating the impact. Well, not sufficient in my view.
Councillor Sturzaker?
I'd rather personally see it written down as from the dates of the 1950s, 1951, because they decided to put it in an inbox and leave it in an inbox for the next 12 months.
Any more questions, comments?
Can I just ask, Madam, if we vote on this amendment, then does that then become the substantive motion? Then everybody's clear on that.
Only if it's approved.
Can I just say then, I read this notice of motion and it's quite long, and the amendment I think covers all of it, and I think it's not wordy, it's short and to the point, and I think you'll probably get a better response from the government with a short question to the point than some long waffly question that they can whittle out of.
Thank you, Councillor Moon. Councillor?
I think the government has to compensate these women. That has to be in the duty bound, because this is a national issue as well as a local issue. You know, that needs to be in particular.
Councillor Longton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The amended motion also talks about possibly leading to financial hardship, whereas the original motion talks about actual hardship based on experience and knowledge.
Point of order.
I just want to be clear, Madam Mayor, if we are discussing a motion that affects people outside, i.e. a national motion, do we have the right to be able to do so? Are we just confined to speaking about residents of Wyre? As I understand that amendment, that relates to the residents of Wyre, whereas the motion is of a national nature. Can I be clear, please, what the order is in relation to how we should, as a borough, vote on issues affecting outside our residents?
Thank you, Sir Robert. I'll just take some advice here.
Can I just say...
Sorry, before you say that, can I just clarification because I've been asked for a point of order. In the original notice of motion, it does say Wyre residents, so there's a link to it. And the amended wording does say Wyre residents. So actually you are debating something in accordance with the Constitution that potentially could affect Wyre residents.
Thank you.
So what's he called? Councillor Armstrong.
Councillor Armstrong, have you got a question? Comment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just 2 points, really. I mean, changing it to women aged 60 to 69, that will mean that women will start to be ruled out of this. So women who should be being supported by this motion will no longer be part of the motion just because we're going by people's age, not by the date of which this would have come into effect. So I think that does change the motion completely. And also, who came up with the mitigate the impact of these changes? What is mitigating these changes? What does that mean in practice? Because it's a very vague message that we're sending to the Department of Work and Pensions where we're just asking them to mitigate.
Any other questions? Councillor Henderson, would you sum up, please?
Yes, I'll sum up. First of all, I would accept the date of the 51. I will accept that, Madam Mayor.
Right. Got that.
Just clarify that, Madam Mayor. If we say April, 6th of April onwards. Yeah. Yes, I'll accept that.
So, members, just to try and help and give you some clarification. So, the amendment that the council just put forward, the leaders put forward, and that you've had a debate on, would now read: this council asks that the government undertakes an urgent review of the transitional state pension arrangements for all women born on or after the 6th of April 1951, aged between 60 and 69, and then the rest continues as is before you.
Favour, please show.
Yeah,
the amendment. Those against?
6.
The amendment therefore is carried. The motion as amended therefore takes the place of the original motion. Do any members wish to propose any further amendments to that amended motion, which has now become the substantive motion? Councillor Fail.
Could it be possible to change the last sentence? I mean, I know that amendment's been passed now, but it now says, or it currently says, the government to do all it can to mitigate the impact of these changes. What I think would be helpful to the government when they receive this request from the Chief Exec is that we actually incorporate the wording that was used at the very last part of the sentence in the original motion, so that it says to mitigate the impact of these changes so that women do not live in hardship due to pension changes they were not told about until it was too late to make alternative arrangements. I think that would be fair enough and a fair compromise to get this through so that we're all on board about passing the wording of this motion.
If that's a proposal and we take that as read, is there a seconder?
I'd like to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis.
So now we can have a debate on that further amendment.
So now we can have a debate on that further amendment. Would members now please indicate if they wish to speak?
Madam Mayor, I'd just like to speak on us having some understanding. I mean, I did speak earlier about 2 cases that I know about where the people have been affected very badly. And I mean, you just need to walk around the supermarket and speak to women within that age group bracket to see how it's affected them and how it's affected what they expected the later end of their lives and what's actually happening. I mean, for me, I'm probably going to work till I'm 67 and a half instead of 60, which I expected to finish at. But at least I've had time to pay into pension funds and do such things. So I just think it's about having empathy, and it's about having some understanding. It's about having a clear message to the government that, you know, we care about these people and in Wyre, these women that are struggling, and that we should be doing something. And it's not about politics or whatever team you're on. This is a lot of us are of that age bracket, and we know lots of women that have suffered because of the pension changes and because they didn't have enough time, and not everybody has got the financial means to pay into pensions and things like that. Like my neighbour next door, who struggled all her life, she's still struggling, you know, to get to the age of 66. And she's going to work when she's really not fit to work. So you've got those implications as well. I get that there's sickness benefits. I understand all of that. But what I'm asking here is that we look at this. This is just a sentence, but it's onto. This is the problem with when you look at something carte blanche. This is the real problems that happen in real life to real people. So I'm asking that we look at this and that we support this on this attachment to the amendment, because this makes it real. This makes it not something that we just throw up there and they'll ignore it. It's saying this is the implications of what happens when you bring legislation in like this, and it's like, bang, that's what's happening. So please, can we all pull together, please support this amendment, and let's go forward and let's do something that we can walk down the street and be proud of, that we fought for the women of Wyre within the ages of 60 to 69, and that we're with them and we understand what hardship they're going through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Councillor Swales.
I'm just going to say that I was really proud to meet the Rossby women, locally and nationally. I think they really show guts and determination. Their battle has been going on a long time, and I think by Wyre doing this would be the right thing to do. They deserve the help, and I think we should help them.
Thank you, Councillor Swales. Councillor Fairbanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Isn't this amendment supporting their motion? I don't understand what the issue is. What is the... But it's just a different way of wording something, but it still means exactly the same. But it still means exactly the same as what it does. Yeah, please, can you clarify?
Sorry, it's not a debate across the chamber. If there's any clarification, we now have a formal amendment to the one that's just been circulated by the leader, which proposes to add the wording at the end of that sentence, so that women do not live in hardship due to pension changes that we're not told about until it was too late to make alternative arrangements. So that has been put forward as a formal amendment, and that's what you're now debating.
Can I just clarify why it's taking 30 seconds?
No, sorry, Councillor Fell, you have the right to sum up at the end. That's the procedure. Because you've proposed an amendment and it's been seconded.
Are there any more questions or comments?
Right, okay, Councillor, he can sum up because it was his proposed amendment.
You can.
So Councillor Fell can sum up.
Councillor Fale, would you like to sum up now, please?
The clarification basically is all that's needed here. It says, the amendment from Councillor Henderson says, this council requests that the Chief Executive writes to the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions to call upon the government to do all it can to mitigate the impact of these changes. So it's about what the Chief Executive needs to do and what needs to be asked. So all we're saying is that in that request to the government, he mentions the fact it's about so that women do not live in hardship due to the pension changes they were not told about until it was too late to make any alternative arrangement. So it's about being specific about what the Chief Exec would like the Chief Exec to write to the government about and ensure this change gets looked at immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The substantive motion makes exactly the same point.
Sorry, Leader.
But I now propose we go to the vote.
No, but what you need to do now, in terms of procedure, we've had a formal amendment put forward with those wordings. You need to take a vote on the further amendment as proposed by Councillor Fail. You need to do that first before then moving on.
On his
All
amendment
those in
now.
favour of the amendment put forward by Councillor Fail?
Can we have a vote, please, on those who favour the amendment put forward by Councillor Fail? All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That amendment, therefore, is not carried. It's lost.
So now we've been asked for a vote to go to a vote on the notice motion that's put forward.
So now it's time to go to a vote on the notice of motion that was put forward.
The amended. Yeah.
The amended one. Amended one.
For those in favour?
For all those in favour,
That's unanimous.
that's unanimous, so the motion's carried.
Madam Mayor, on a further point of order, may I ask that this motion also be sent to the local members of Parliament in addition to the relevant ministers?
Sorry to advise you, Madam Mayor, that's not a point of order, Sir Robert. You may wish to send that independently, but unfortunately that's not a point of order.
I'll speak to you later, Sir Robert. Is that it?
Yeah.
That concludes the meeting for this evening, so thank you very much for your attendance, and if you'd like to come for hospitality, I'd be pleased to meet you all in the Members' Lounge.